welcome to the Tolleson-Mack podcast. Still here at the Lazy Arena. We're kind of in between. I think we're getting ready for the preview for the sale horses. We got Bobby Mote on the podcast. First qualification to the NFR, 2001. Last qualification, 2015. That's pretty impressive. And just for easy math, that's 15 qualifications to the NFR in one of the toughest sports known to man as far as I'm concerned. Toughest on your body. Absolutely. So, Bobby, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thank you for coming, man. I was really excited. Our social media lady, Goose husband, Carson, says, I can call Bobby Mote. He'll come on. Who? He says, Bobby Mote. Oh, man, I got all excited. I sure like talking to these team ropers, but...
Gets a little old, doesn't it?
Right, yeah. So, yeah, let's kind of just start. I mean, the bareback riding and the horses on that side versus the horses on this side. And we had Kirsten Bold on probably a month ago. Yeah, kind of in Prescott, and she really got into it. So we'll let you talk about it.
Well, before I rode bareback horses, I grew up, both my parents trained and showed cutting horses.
Okay.
So from the time I could walk, they had me on the only way they could keep me out of trouble was to keep me on a horse. And so I kind of grew up going to horse shows, and my parents split up when I was about 9 or 10. And so then that whole thing changed. The horse market, some of the tax write-offs and things that people could do then, like we had a couple stallions that they'd syndicated, and horse business went from being really good to really not worth a dang, and it kind of just basically went out of business. And so then my dad went to work as a pharmacist. My mom was training horses, but for other,
that's not a bad gig. You went right into being a pharmacist.
Well, he was a pharmacist before, so
okay.
Yeah. So he fell back on that, and then I was just kind of in the middle, and a teenager trying to figure out who or what you wanted to be or do. I raced BMX bikes and did stuff like that, and I was kind of like, I see my boys are a little bit like almost like anything not to do with horses. I kind of went that direction for a few years, and then I was about 15, like in high school, you're trying to figure out where do you fit in.
Yeah.
I didn't fit with the jocks. I wasn't athletic. I didn't fit with the, academic kids because I wasn't good at school. And there was some cowboy kids there, and where I grew up in Redmond, Oregon, there were a lot of cowboy kids, and that's kind of where I wanted to be. So I started hanging out with them. They listened to Chris Ledoux. Chris Ledoux sang about riding bareback horses and rodeo and how awesome it must have been. And
how cool were those old songs?
Yeah, I mean, all those tapes. I had them all, and it just brainwashed myself to be a bareback rider. And then I get started, and I'm like 28, 38 slim, 31 MWZ slims, and zits all over, uncoordinated, big feet. Want to ride bareback horses, but dang sure nobody gave me, any chance of succeeding at it. And rightfully so, because I spent more time in the ER than I did, on top of it.
You're a big guy, too. Time. It's tough.
Well, and, the way the Born to Buck program has changed the size of the guys who ride. Because when I came along, the stereotypical bareback rider was about 5'6", 5'7", 140 pounds. The horses weren't that big. The horses were nowhere near as good as they are now, but they, the draft influence and the breeding program, like the Calgary Stampede, really, they were the ones that started it. And others followed suit. And then when these contractors got smart enough to start sharing studs and shipping them back and forth, then it started to spread. And now a small bucking horse is 1,200 pounds. Then that was, you're lucky to get on one that good, right? So then everybody tells me, you're 6 foot tall and you suck. You shouldn't be doing this, and so I was.
Boy, how nice would it be to find the guy that said you're 6 foot tall and you suck and be like, I'm having a problem carrying all these NFR buckles. Do you mind all in one for me?
Yeah, you'd have to look too far to find one then. But so then I went to the amateur rodeos and stuff. I couldn't make state in high school in Oregon. That's how good I wasn't. So
was it tough?
No.
Oregon?
No, I mean, it just like making state in the bareback ride. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
The first time, I was good at staying on them. Like I wouldn't hit the ground, and that was from riding colts and stuff enough to know like I was not going to hit the ground.
I was going to ask that, like coming from that background. I mean, your balance.
I think it was good, but then riding horses and cutting type horses is so counterintuitive to riding bareback horses.
Right.
When their front end goes up, you go back with your upper body, and everything in you says go forward.
Okay.
Right? So I could ride them, I just couldn't spur them. And I remember I was at Union, Oregon, and I'm just like, I'm so tired of not being good. Like in rodeo, if you're not good, then you're out of all the cliques.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody wants to hang out with a guy who sucks. And it's just the truth. And so I was just like sort of on the outside there and just like still want to fit in. So I was at Union, Oregon. I was at this high school rodeo, and I remember laying down the night before. I'm just like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to spur this horse. So I get on. It's a great big arena. Cesar's probably rode there before. And I do. I spur this horse pretty good for the time. Whistle blows. This horse takes off running. It's a giant arena. And he's running and comes to a corner and kind of get the pickup men kind of hem him in at the corner. And he tries to jump out and goes to jump over the top rail, and it's pipe and breaks my leg, piles up. I get up. Somebody goes to help me up, and my foot stays on the ground when my leg picks up, and it's facing back the wrong direction and stuff. And so I broke it really bad. Well, then you're back, surgery, bunch of metal and stuff in there, and back on the sidelines again. And then so, but it was a turning point for me because I finally broke loose and like spurred one.
Yeah, you got your mind set to what you.
It was like there was this block. There was a block. It's hard to stay on them. It's another thing to turn loose and expose yourself when you don't, especially you don't have any confidence, right? So I got past that point, and then when I came back from that injury, I started doing a little better. And then I went from not being able to spur to like when that gate would come open, I'm just like letting it go, right? And so now I miss them out all the time. So like I'm really inconsistent. I would maybe make a really good ride on one, but they'd throw the flag because I couldn't make myself hold my feet for one jump. And so it's kind of like one end of the spectrum to the other. And then as soon as I turned 18, I knew that I needed to be around the pros. And so, this time of year in the Columbia River circuit, that's where all most of the big rodeos are up there. And so you'd have Mark and Marvin Garrett, Larry Sandvik, Clint Corey, Land Longines, Kelly Wardell, all the best guys at the time were riding. They would go to every little circuit rodeo we had. So if I went to Heppner, Oregon, Moses Lake, didn't matter. Hermiston, it was all the same. All the best guys were there. So I've got my permit, and I would work, whether it was building fence, riding colts, cutting firewood, whatever, all week. I knew I needed to have $400 or $500 in money so I could pay my entry fees on the weekend. And then I would go and I would basically give it up because I couldn't beat those guys, but I would watch them and I would ask questions.
You were paying for school.
I was paying for school, yeah. I was chalking it up to education. So I just figured if I get around these guys, I'll learn enough that, someday I'll be able to beat them. And then I go from that to, and all the pros, the guys that are good will help anybody. If you're willing, they can tell if you're not going to be like argue with them or like a kind of guy. If you're like ask questions, like they'll bend over backwards because they all start at the same place too. And so those guys were all good to me, and I got to know Clint Corey a little bit through that process. Well, then the guys I was rodeoing with were more concerned with going to the bar after and screwing off and stuff, and I could see that wasn't what the pros did. The guys who won took it seriously. I don't want to be like them, and so I called Clint Corey one day out of the blue, and I said, hey, I want to rodeo with you. Can I enter with you? And he said, well, you're not going to get in all the rodeos I'm going to. He says, but if you want, you can enter and try to get in where you can. And do you have a van? You have a van? Yeah. And I said, well, I got a van and I'll drive. So
he's like, come pick me up.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. So I started rodeoing with him, and that was a turning point for me. I got around him, and I would stay up all night with him when we were driving. I was driving. He was in the passenger seat, and ask questions. And what he knew how to do was win. There were guys that could ride better than him, that could handle strong horses better than him, but nobody could outwin him. He would get on the horse, and again, the horses weren't as good. And so, in a herd of 20 horses, there were 3 that were a chance to win something. Clint could get on the other 17 and still knock a check out of them. And he knew how. And it was partly...
What a compliment that is.
Yeah, partly it was his attitude, and partly it was his technique. It was both, But I wanted to pick that up. So I learned I soaked it up with him. And so that was about 1999, I think, 8, 9, right in there that I started rodeoing with him. And then 2000 was the first year that I had kind of a breakthrough. It was 99 that I started rodeoing with him. Because I rodeoed for like almost 5 years before I made the finals. So I had kind of a breakthrough year in 2000. Made the short round at Caldwell and Albuquerque when they were tour rodeos, and ended up they had the summer tour finale, which it didn't count that year when it was at Mesquite the first year. They called it the Copenhagen Cup.
I remember that.
I went there and just did what I had been doing and ended up winning it. Made the final, the top 4 round, and Lan Longinet and Mark Garrett and trying to think of who else. There's one other guy in there, all the best guys. I won.
Lan Longinet. I haven't heard that name for a long time.
Yeah, Lan, 2-time world champion bareback rider, did really good. So I won 21,000, and it didn't count. If it had counted, I'd have made the finals that year. But for me, that was just like,
you can do it.
I can do it. I
Lions
belong.
run with lions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of it that comes. I mean, you can't do it without the skill, the ability, but you also have to feel like you belong. Like you make your mind up, you belong. And I did. And so 2001 was my first year to make it. 2001 was my next biggest lesson because I go into it 3rd in the world, and the first round, I win the round. And then I won 2 more rounds that week, and I thought, man, I am like, this place is, I should have bought a place in Vegas. Like, I'm just certain that I'm the best thing. And I started getting a little pretty cocky, real cocky. And in the 10th round, I had a really good horse, the Kesslers, called Order Up, that they had already won a round on. Lan actually won the 5th round on. And they're telling me, if you just get a score, you win the world, you win the average. And I'm just like, I'm going to win the round. Like, I might set a world record.
We're going to go to him right now.
Yeah. And so I kind of reverted back to just going too fast and spurred over his neck, got bucked off, got hung up, got drug around Tolleson-Mack. They had to rope the horse to stop him. Kicks my shafts off around my ankles. I got 16,000 people looking down on me, and I am this tall. Like, I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Rather humbling experience.
It was humbling, but I needed it. And I didn't want to hear that at the time, and nobody could have told me that for a little while either. But
not and kept their teeth probably.
No, I was sour about it. And then when it all, when I had time to reflect on it, like what I learned was, it doesn't matter if it's the 10th round and everything's on the line, and all you need to do is make the whistle, or you need to win, or you're in the practice pen. You just have to do your job. And you have to just, and really in a sport like that where you have to react, the only thing you can control is the first step. It doesn't make any sense to practice or think a lot about the second or third step, because the first step is the only one that you can really control. The horse is standing still in the chute at this point. Not like your head horse is standing in the corner. Like you have the time to be conscious and do your job there. Past that, it's a reaction. And so then I wanted in the worst way to have that one back, but you can't. And so then 2002 comes around. I come back to the 10th round. Now I'm in the 10th round, and I have to win the round to win the world. And I had a horse called Alleyways of Kessler's that was the bucking horse of the year that year. And I remember just like trying to almost downplay it in my mind, which was the opposite than I did the year before. I'm just like, I'm just going to get a good spur out. I'm just going to focus on this, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And it did. I win the round, win the world. And, that lesson was, I'm still trying to remind myself of that, in the roping. But I mean, it's like that for anything. I mean, when you develop your skills and know how to compete, like you can't try harder when you get in a bigger situation.
Yeah,
if you're doing your best, you're doing your best.
We see a few guys in the team rope, and I personally do every year at the NFR, and they go out there every night and do their job. Rope horns, rope feet. Rope horns, rope feet. They might not be 3-9, they might not be, 4 flat. Just every night they're steady. And then come the end of the NFR, that's when the announcers are talking. The average is going to come into play right now, boys. It's going to come into play. And
every year.
Yeah, every year there's always somebody, and, you can't put your finger on who it's going to be every year, but it just seems like there's a team every year that just says, okay, we're going to go do it. We're going to do it right, just like we do it at home. It's kind of like what you said. It's a mindset. We talked to a lot of people on here. One that really resonates with me was Larry D. Guy. She talked about the breakaway game and, coming from ranching and doing all that stuff. And I think it was kind of, she got comfortable with us or whatever once we were talking, and she told us she has a mental game coach. And she said that once I got my mental game right, this shoulder, it just went to work. It's like you said, once I got my mental game right and I got to spur this horse out, rest is reaction. I've been doing that for a long time, and that's a huge part in this thing, I think,
Yeah, it is. I mean, the people who are good and solid, but I mean, you don't get from where you are to where you want to be without going through. I mean, the lessons that hurt the worst are the ones that stick with you. And that's why I can recall it so easily, because I lived it.
Yeah.
Talk to everybody. Bob, you've always been one of my heroes, man. I got to go to the finals, and 2001 when you made it was the year I graduated high school. So you were pretty cool back then, you know what I mean? But tell the listeners and the viewers when you made the transition to roping and you kind of started taking that a little more serious. It's a little bit later on in your bareback career. I remember roping with you at Northwest, some jackpots and stuff. I'm like, I thought Bob was cool, but I'm getting roped with this Bob now. He's really cool, man.
Yeah, so I've always had horses and stuff, and I rode, had some colts and stuff of my own, and I just started them and rode them around and got them riding and stuff like that. But I didn't know anything about team roping. I didn't know how to swing a rope or anything. And I won the circuit. The first year I won the circuit in 2001, I will win a Todd Sloan roping saddle. So then of course I'm going to ride colts in it. The first time one just barely even backs up and bucks. My feet go behind me. I get bucked off. You can imagine how mad that made me. I'm just like, this saddle ain't worth a damn. So they're like, well, they're not for riding colts in, they're for roping it. You don't want to rope with your feet in front of you. And just like, well, I guess I need to rope because I want to ride this saddle. First saddle I've won, So there was some friends of mine that lived down the road, like half a mile down the road, and they would rope every evening. They would rope and drink Cruz Light and pick up dust and stuff. And they had fun, and they're just like, I would ride my horse down. They're like, well, we'll teach you how to rope. And so I started roping with them. And then it didn't take very long until I figured out that, well, I want to be better than that. And
the competitive kicked in.
Yeah, I did.
This guy's one of the best competitors I know.
Oh, man.
So then, Charlie Crawford, he lived in the area, and he was starting to do good rodeo by then, and I'd ask, so every time when I go to the rodeo, I'd find some team roper guys that I knew. I'd start asking questions, like, what do you do here? What do you do there?
Kind of what you did in the bareback, right?
Kind of the same thing, yeah. So then I started, like in the winter rodeos, especially then, like at San Antonio, you might be up first and last. Well, sometimes it didn't make sense to fly back and forth from Oregon in between. And so Charlie, he would work for Tyler Magnus down here in the winters. And so they'd let me go. I'd go stay in the tack room if I had to. I'd go stay over there, and it'd put me on whatever, and I'd get to rope. And so I got to watch those guys.
And be around the guys, like you said, to bring your game up.
Yeah, be around those guys. And I mean, Tyler, I think, was, one of the best hands at the time, and rode lots of different kinds of horses.
Had a TV show about that time, too.
Had the roping show, and somebody I really admired he just bent over backwards to help me, him and Charlie and those guys. And so I got to roping more, and then I got to where I would start bringing a horse down here and go to some jackpots and stuff. But I never got to just focus on it, because as soon as I would really start paying enough attention to my roping to start improving, my bareback riding would suffer. And so I'd be like in and out, and I never got to go. Most of these guys, they start out in high school rodeo, they go amateur rodeo, they learn how to, score, they learn how to go jackpot, they learn how to go, do it in a smaller circle, and then they're good, they go to the pros. I didn't have that option, and I was already going to these rodeos. It's like, well, hell, I might as well just enter. So I started entering Ellensburg and Reno and places like that, and I had no business doing it. But it was a little bit like I did with the bareback ride, and I thought, well, if I'm going to figure out how to rope at the 8 o'clock slack in Walla Walla, I got to go. Right. And so I would, and I spent a lot of money. I spent most of the money I won riding bareback horses for a while trying to rope, buying horses.
Again, you were paying for your education.
Well, trying. I don't know what kind of education it was, but
turned out pretty good. I mean, you're roping out of Futurity, right?
Yeah, so it was good. It was good experience. It was those guys. It's just you can't understate how good they are to be able to do it in all conditions, all the time, and they don't get to stop and practice in between and work on it. They're just and nowadays it's even tougher. I mean,
these guys are great, man.
Going for blood every single time. At least
every time they back in the box, we're ready.
Yeah, at least then you could go to those Northwest rodeos. If you made 2 smooth runs, you could win 5th in the average. If I could go win 5th in the average at Canby or Ellensburg or something like that, I was tickled. Yeah. That was a win for me. And most of the time I couldn't catch 2. I either didn't have that kind of partner or I would screw up. I just had.
Were you heading or heeling or
head? And I would glaze over from the back of the box to the steer sometimes. Sometimes it still happens. I just get like until you do it a lot, the picture doesn't clear up. And that's how riding bareback horses is. The first few jumps, when you're starting, it's like at my schools, the analogy I give, when they go to the pheasant hunting places, they farm these pheasants, and then they take the hunters out in the brush, and they take the pheasants in a gunny sack, and they spin them around, get them all disoriented, and they turn them loose. Otherwise, they would just haul ass, and soon the guy turning the pheasants loose would get shot, right? So they get behind a bush, and they're kind of like dizzy. That's the way the first few jumps are when you learn to ride bareback horses. And really, I think when you're roping, when you start competing, and so I was in and out. There'd be times when I could see it clearly and I could do it, and there'd be times I couldn't. And then Mike Beers is another guy who helped me with my roping a lot. And one summer he said, well, I'll rope with you. And so he healed for me. And the first 8 rodeos we went to, we placed at. We went to Canada. He was smart. He said, I'll rope with you. He said, but you got to listen. He said, you do everything I tell you the way I tell you. He said, or we're not going to do this. I said, okay. So we went to Canada, and we went to, a bunch of those smaller rodeos up there where the score was short, and, really you just go make a clean run. And so I would handle them terrible. I would get out of the barrier. I had a really good horse at the time. I had a bay horse that I bought from a guy that worked at the Hermiston sale yard named Tony Cerna. And he had this horse that was, if I had him today, I would rodeo. He was so good. He wasn't real sound. I made way too many runs in the practice pen trying to figure out how to ride him and kind of wore him out. But he was a dang good horse. And this horse could score. He knew the start. Even whether I was pulling on, he would hit it. And he could fly. And he would just run and just kind of keep running just enough to let you, get him where you can heel him fast. And Mike would heel him fast because that's what he does. And we would place. And so then it's kind of the same thing in bareback riding. You place 8 rodeos in a row, you start getting cocky. So I'm gonna
start puffing your chest out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go fast on this one. Then I'd start missing. He'd be just like, "Dang it! I told you, you need to listen." So that year we won a little over 30,000 roping at rodeos, and then I had a good year riding bareback horses.
What year was that? I'm sorry.
I think it was around 2011 or 12, okay. Right in there. And we actually won some. Like it was pretty good. And I got hurt real bad at a rodeo in San Juan Capistrano. I split my pancreas in half. Had a horse flipping the chute. And so that was the end of the season. We were going to I needed 2 more rodeos for my Canadian rodeo count to make the CFR. And I couldn't go anymore because I couldn't even sit up in bed and sneeze for 2 months. So it was.
How long did that take you to come back from?
Well, I made it back for the finals that year.
Oh, you did?
But it was.
Oh, yeah, I guess you did, yeah.
I mean, it should have killed me. Like that's a whole nother story, that deal. But anyway, so that was kind of. And then after that, I roped with some different guys. But Mike was the real partner that I had. That if I listened to him, then we did good. And so that just goes to show you, if you don't try to beat yourself, you got somebody like him that can clean it up, and you just go catch them. You know, you go to the right places. There's some money to be won. But until I was done rodeoing, I didn't ever get the chance to just focus enough on my roping to get good enough, you know. And so I've really just spent a lot of money at the rodeos on entry fees.
So this is going to be kind of a funny question, probably you're going to think, but do you got the fire for team roping like you had for bareback riding? Like, man, I remember watching you ride bareback horse. Same thing I say about Cesar. When he backed in the box, he sucked his hat down. He looked like he was going to ride a bull. Like you, same deal. When you got on your bareback horse and you're working your hand in your binds, I mean, you look like you're ready to eat. Like, you know, do you have that same fire when you back in the hidden box?
I got to turn it down.
Yeah.
Because you'll transfer that to your horse.
Yeah.
And I'll overdo it.
Right.
Like I'm still trying to figure out where to be. I'll either try to back off too much, and then just like yesterday, I looked like I had polio in my feet. I never kicked once.
I watched it because they, you know, said I jumped up and watched real quick, you know, and I said, man, he's gonna be hard on himself when he rides out of the bottom of the arena.
Yeah, and I didn't do as good as I wanted to because I felt like I backed off too much, and so it's somewhere in the middle. And what's even harder when you're showing a 4-year-old, you know, especially a racehorse, like you can't transfer that energy to him. And so, you know, I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'll get back to you when I know. But I
appreciate it.
I have to turn that intensity down, because if I let myself be as, you know, let the competitive stuff take over and be as aggressive as I want to, I'll overdo it.
Yeah, and you know, that's true on the training the horses and things like that. Is that the same when you're out rodeoing, team roping? I mean, you kind of got to dial it down a little.
Well, I haven't been rodeo and team roping.
But like, say when you were going with Mike or something like that.
I had to go back to the first step.
Yeah, okay.
And if I just knew
enough.
that if I scored good,
Yeah.
then if I could just make myself just think about that and not the next step, then the rest of it would take care of itself. But you can't. You know, I don't think, for me, it doesn't do any good to focus on the stuff out in the arena. That's why you practice.
Right.
You practice to get those reactions.
So I got to be involved in the bareback ride just a little bit. I kind of traveled with the wolf pack a little bit. Them boys went with me quite a bit. Me and Tom McFarland Jr. rodeo together, so we all jumped in together. And that's what they told me is your work ethic that's why you were a world champion, because you worked really, really hard at your game. You transferred that into this horse training deal, right? I mean, you get up, you work hard at it, you're trying to make each horse better every day. Let people know, like, it's, you know, you made a transition from one event, or, you know, one of the arenas to the other, but still, the work ethic still has to be there if you want to compete against the Trevor Brazils, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to outwork them sometimes, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you can outwork him, but I mean, he's already got such a head start on all the other aspects of it. The only thing that I can do is work.
Right.
You know, and so what I like about this is I enjoy the preparation. So, like, I like to get ready and do everything that I think I should do to get ready, and then see if it works when I go put it to flight. And so then, like last week, I was up in Rock Springs and went to Futurity up there, and most of my horses, I made 2 big mistakes, I think. One of them was I entered too many classes on those horses, and the second is I tried to have everything so because I knew it was going to be tough, and so my horses and I peaked the last practice at the house before we left, and then when we got up there, then we run the steers through. I'm just like excited to get a run or two on the cattle up there, and they started fizzling out. They were a little too tight in the box, a little too tight in the arena. One of them was a little sore.
Babies.
Yeah, and so now you got to figure out not only how do I manage me in this dumpster fire, but I got these horses that every one of them are different. The one that's cold-blooded, one that's hot-blooded, and two that are in the middle. And so you got it. One's long stride, one's short stride, one scores good, one is a little touchy. And so it really makes you have to think about what you're going to do before you do it each time. And so, it's a lot. And so then I went from that, and I drive home from Rock Springs. I'm thinking about my whole career has been about you go to the gym, you work out, you visualize, you do the work to try to prepare, you go to the rodeo, and when you're driving from that rodeo back home or to the next one, you're thinking about what do I need to tweak. And so the parallel for me with this is it's the same. You work every day on trying to make your horses or yourself better. And then when you do get the chance to go compete, which I love, you go do that, and then you kind of just like I've got my mental notes of what I feel like I didn't do as good yesterday or did good yesterday, and I want to apply it tomorrow. And so I like the preparation because you can see results if you do the preparation right. And then I like to go rope with the guys who do good, the best guys. I like to go rope with Trevor and Miles, and I've been to Dakotas. I've been to a handful of these guys now that I'm kind of getting to know them and see how they all do it a little different too. I went and spent a day with Kobe Lovell a couple weeks ago, and I learned some stuff from him that I want to punch all my pro friends for not telling me all these years that I've asked them questions, and so it's just like everybody, but basically they all say the same thing. It's just they say it differently. And so sometimes your interpretation, in rodeo, everybody just assumes that everybody understands what all these terminologies mean. You know what I mean? Like, feel your tip. Well, that could mean something completely different to you than the next guy. Right? And so...
I hold the rope different than you would.
Yeah, no kidding. Exactly, yeah. And so there's a lot about that, I think, that, and so it just, you're always learning, but I enjoy this so much because it's a little, especially the 4-year-old thing. I like the 4-year-old thing the best because it's a little like stock car racing. We're all going to start at the same point. And you can tell when you show up who's done their homework and who hasn't.
You can tell who's put in the work here.
Yeah, you can. And at this point in the year, it's a little different. But like in the spring, if everybody's riding 4-year-olds, I think it's pretty cool because you can see who had their horse broke right, who had them prepared right, who had a good individual to begin with. And so I think that's fun. I may not be the best guy to get them from there to the next stage. I don't know. I'm working on it, but I do enjoy it.
You surround yourself around the right guys, or doing this stuff, and like them horses you ride man, they're beautiful. Like that's one thing you've done. You got around the right stuff. So tell us about a few of the horses that you get to ride out here.
Well, so in 2017 I started working for Reliance Ranches, and they have a real successful quarter horse racing program. They're in the top 4 owners in quarter horse racing.
Yes.
And so Mr. McKinney, he had some race horses that were geldings that had served him well, that he didn't want to see go to match racing or anything else, and they were just staying around the place. He's just like, I've had this dream that you could take a racehorse and repurpose them and make a head horse that, like at the BFI, is going to catch up in the first third of the arena.
Oh yeah.
And so he's just like, if you think you can do it, let's try it. So he hired me. And so then I started wading into these horses, and I had a really like an All-American Derby winner, another horse, between two horses, they'd won $2 million racing.
Cool.
You know, those horses they didn't owe anybody anything. They've done enough in racing. They weren't really cut out to be the type of head horses that we're looking for. And then I would start taking some of the ones that maybe didn't make the race program, because they're looking for a rare individual. They're looking for a horse that's running this weekend at the All-American. They're not looking for a horse that's going to go to the county fair races. And so they raise 30 or 40 babies a year, and they sell some, and they race some, and they buy some. So they're constantly trying to evolve their breeding program. So when they started, and I wasn't with them at the time, but when they started, they came to this conclusion pretty quickly that you can breed to any stud. But if you don't have a mare that has that you know, if you don't have a blue hen mare, you don't have, your chances of having a runner aren't really good, and they don't have the value, because you have to be selling some of these yearlings to make money. And so they set out to start getting the right kind of mares. Typically, if somebody has a brood mare like that, they're not going to sell it. But you could buy a filly that's got the right kind of pedigree and prove it out, and that mare, that filly runs and does good, then you breed her the right studs, and then you'll have something. And so that when they started that process, now it's matured, and they have mares like that. And so, you know, you get to ride horses out of mares that won several $100,000 by, you know, phenomenal studs. Those horses should be good race horses. Sometimes they're not big enough to be able to run the 440 and win, and so I'll get them. Now that's evolved again to, like, my daughter runs barrels. So I'll back up. They had a Dash to Fame stud called Red Hot Fame before I came along, that they bred to one of their rope horse mares who was a Smokin' Jose mare. They bred, he was a racehorse, didn't quite make the cut as a racehorse. They had somebody try to run barrels on him. He did pretty good. I think got maybe buzzed up and started running up the wall. He ended up selling to Brazil. And one of the first projects that I had when I started working for him was this 3-year-old Dash to Fame grandson, silly looking. He had a big scar across the bridge of his nose from when he was as a baby. He ran into a concrete water trough and fractured his skull and had it wired all together. And he was kind of an outlaw and wanted to buck and wanted to pull back and broke every lead rope on the place and stuff. And I started riding him, and I get him riding, and I told my wife, I said, you need to make a barrel horse of this. He can lope a circle, you know, in a 6-foot circle and keep his hind leg under him. Is so strong. And so she's just like, yeah, right. I've seen you ride him. He's crazy.
Some of those halters are mine.
I know that trick.
Yeah, so I get him riding pretty good, and they start working with him. And then my daughter had a really good, solid barrel horse that she was high school rodeoing on. She was winning. He got sick and died, and she needs a high school rodeo horse. And high school rodeos in Texas,
That's a real deal.
Yeah, and so Kate let her start riding this horse, Red Bull. So she starts running. She seasoned him at the high school rodeos, and she ended up winning the region on him and doing good. And then since then has won a couple $100,000 on him so far, and he's just getting warmed up. Like he's a phenomenal horse. But that showed the Kinneys that, you know, if you cross the right amount of race on the right amount of cow, you can end up with something that's versatile. You know, some of the racehorses, you know, the racehorses are built and designed to go forward. Stopping and, you know, flexing their hocks and taking a pull and stuff isn't really their, you know, it's just harder on them. And so it's not that they can't do it, and there's some that can do it really good, but the percentages are lower. But there's a certain amount of what they have that, like if you ride a running bred horse that can get across there isn't anything that can keep up with it. Like there's
Well, that was
fast.
a good example that you gave, like the BFI. I mean, they run them down in that first little bit. I mean,
They do, yeah. I mean, because they run with just violent speed right from the back of the box, because that's what they have to do on the track. I mean, they start behind the gates.
They do, yeah.
They stand flat-footed, and they want them to leave flat and low, and they got a horse on each side of them trying to crash into them and pinch them off, and they have to have enough grit to run through them.
And
So
enough heart, enough brain.
Yeah.
enough everything to get through.
Yeah, and so I mean, those are attributes that we want. But then we also want them to get off of it when we get close to the steer and see the steer.
Yeah,
So
get
that's
on the
where you
hind
guys
end.
come in.
Yeah. So I've spent a lot of time on some of these that were X-race horses, and then I've gotten to ride some that maybe like this 4-year-old that we've been riding is doing good. He didn't go to the track because he was too small, and he's been the best one that we've had so far. And so there's a certain amount of that you can train to them. There's a certain amount that's just instinctive that they're still going to run, and they can run like crazy. But so now it's sort of changed to, we've been buying fillies, performance bred fillies, like come to the Pink Buckle, Ruby Buckle sale, BFA, different places like that, buying fillies that are going to be versatile, that can rope and run barrels. We have some that aren't really built to rope. They're just are going to run barrels. We have some, most of them can do both. And so I'll rope on them one day, the girls will ride them one day. We kind of go back and forth. And then the goal is, like 2 of the 4-year-olds that I have here will start Futurity in this November, barrels. And fillies, ultimately, will have, earnings in both. We'll breed them to these great studs and, try to start getting the product that everybody wants. And you're going to spend enough money buying a prospect, you better have some versatility in there.
And some background to it.
Yeah, to be able to, if he's not going to be a phenomenal barrel horse, he could be a great head horse, still have value. And so that's where we're heading. And then, in coming years, if I do my job, we do our job right on these fillies, we'll be able to sell the yearlings and 2-year-olds and stuff, and we'll have to ride every single one of them. But for right now, like I started 13 2-year-olds this year that I've got, and I've got half a dozen 3-year-olds. I've got all the horses that we're showing, just a handful of other odds and ends. So you got 24, 26 horses that you're trying to get ridden.
Do you guys have anything in the sale?
I have one of mine in the sale.
You have one of yours
Yeah.
in the sale?
Yeah, and the only reason I've got him in the sale is because of all these others I'm telling you about that I don't get paid to ride mine.
Right.
So, and we wanted to retain a spot in this because we're optimistic that this is going to go big, and so we want to keep it. And so, all of the stuff that we have in the program is headed in the right direction. So we don't want to sell those. So I put mine in.
Yeah, I really think an event like this is going somewhere, and just from the casual fan watching, I think it's so cool to. And I said this earlier on a different podcast, but saying it to you, it's real cool the guys can throw 30 foot of rope. But in a deal like this, you get to watch the head horse work. Yep. You get to watch him run them cattle down like you do at the BFI, same deal. But you get them watch him, and like that big dark brown horse that Trevor was riding.
Yeah, Step of Small Town.
Oh, that was my favorite head horse out of this whole deal.
My favorite horse too.
Yeah, just side pass across there, and I mean he'd be side pass across there, rolling back, and I mean it just gave you that heel shot. I mean it just did everything but put the heelers.
No mistakes.
No mistakes.
No mistakes, and really good on top of it. Yeah.
And we interviewed Trevor earlier, and he was telling us, oh yeah, Tristan loves that horse. He takes him and goes to the jackpots on him and does everything. So for me, watching this, I agree with you. I think it's going to be something really big and real popular. And having a sale, we talked to another guy, come from Texas. He gets to sit here and watch these horses work for 3 days. Mm-hmm. So he's going to know how that horse is going to react when he takes it home. Not just a horse that's going to ride in the ring and spin a hole in the ground and, oh, wow, that's real neat. Well, he might not do that for you when you get home,
Well, the last couple of years have changed what everybody's looking for.
Right.
I mean, I didn't want to look at anything that was younger than 5, been ranched on, had some good papers. And then by then you'd have kind of an idea what you're going on with, and you could just start roping the smarty, and you start roping steers and just turning steers, and by the time they're 6 or 7, you've got something you start jackpotting on. Now I could really care less if I go to a jackpot. Go to a jackpot, you got people have other horses lead them in the box and want to kick their butt out. As soon as they drop the flag, they're running to the strip and shoot, and it just looks like just a circus.
Shaking their head.
I mean, no disrespect to those guys, but I mean, I just because there's so much preparation put into these horses. I hate it when that stuff happens. And so I like this because now we're looking at breeding. We're looking at 2-year-olds. We're looking at, And just as I explained, we're breeding horses for the purpose of making rope horses and barrel horses.
And you're furthering the game instead of backing it
Yeah.
up.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I don't want to get in a reaching contest with these guys. I need a horse that can score, let me hit the barrier, and can fly to the steer to help to equalize where my my inability to handle my rope like them. You gotta have something to equalize it.
Yeah.
But then what makes it harder is when they're riding a horse like you are, and they can do it with their rope.
We were just talking about Caleb Driggers, for example.
Yeah.
You got a chance to compete against that guy. So I think the reason he's had so much success last couple of years is he's figured out how to ride his horse a little better than everybody else. Yeah. He can still reach. His horses are still running. He's still getting his heeler fast, good shot, and it's consistent. They're doing it every day. And I feel like that's going to make the game better because I feel like if the horse is working properly, scoring, keeping his feet on the ground, not taking any extra steps, it makes the times faster. And you get to see it to tenths of a second matter in the roping nowadays. So if you can eliminate, an error with your horse messing up, not scoring right, or it's like the game is going to change. And like you've seen it out there too, rodeo, and the horses are better looking. They're bred right. They're doing this stuff, and I'm curious to see what the game is going to be in another 5 years. I'm impressed by it right now. I've slowed down. I've quit. Retired a little bit last couple of years to hang out with the boys and help my kids out. But now I'm a fan of it. I'm like, wow, this is good roping. You know what I mean? I like to see this stuff. But I think that's why Caleb has got a gold buckle last couple of years, because he learned how to evolve and learn how to ride his horse and keep his horse working at the rodeos. And then he comes to the shows and he kicks everybody's butt at the shows too. And he goes to rodeos and kicks their butt at the rodeo. So he's figuring it out.
What do you see? What do you think about it? What do we think about the guys that are in it? The image of it and things like that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of talented guys that are riding really good. And as I touched on before, the horses are so much better. I mean, the stuff that isn't good enough anymore. I mean, really, at the NFR, you pick the horses into 5 pins. Okay, they take 100 horses. There are 5 pins of 20. So there's 5 basically that sleep the first 5 rounds, and those 5 come into the draw of the second 5 rounds. So those horses buck twice. Of those 5 pins, I would say the bottom 3 pins, when I was going, probably wouldn't make the cut this year. Now, that's how much better the horses are. So what is the, I mean, you're talking about 35-40% better or more good horses. I mean, just at that level. And then beyond that, there's more that are just more user friendly. And so
I do see that a lot of kick, when those guys get tapped off on them, it's just that beautiful bareback ride.
Well, and it's easier to ride good when you're like, that's easy on your body.
When you're riding,
doing it right. Yes, when they're hopping and skipping and ducking and diving, that's
shoulders.
And that's what's hard on you. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, and that's good. That's great for those guys. I'm glad. And those guys that are good, like really good. I'm adamant that I want rodeo to finally get professional. The fact that I don't care if you take the deal with Sage Kinsey right now. If you're at that level of guy, you can win that much in 20, 30 rodeos, stay home and heal up. There is no godly reason why somebody should have to just have your name in the hat and nod your head 40 times a minimum to make it to the finals. I just think that's the least professional thing you can do.
Yeah, I say that a lot.
Yeah, and I just want to, I've always been an advocate for the guys. I want it to be where they can, because it's hard on you, right? I mean, this week Trent Montero died riding bareback horses.
Right.
And
you were being close yourself, right?
Yeah, and so anybody that says like I would go toe to toe with anybody who says that if I say that they need to make more money and they need to be able to keep more of the money that they make, like I dare the person to argue with me on that one because it's just I was fortunate to have a long career. Like I had twice the length of career that most guys in that event are able to have. And mostly it's just because, I mean, thankfully I was built pretty durable, I guess. But I mean, I had like half a dozen surgeries over my career, 2 neck surgeries, and, broken back and pancreas and other things and stuff. And so I was fortunate, and they always happened at the right time of the year where I either had enough money, where I could, lay off to the finals, or it happened early enough in the year where I could catch up. But when you're done rodeoing or you get hurt and you're home, all you can do is start selling your stuff that you acquired while you were rodeoing to pay your bills.
Yeah,
and you could blame it on the guys all you want, but the fact is their job is to focus on their craft. They're not supposed to be focused on doing real estate investments and starting side businesses, or else they won't compete at that level.
And so James doesn't have to worry about a side business.
They don't have to worry about a side gig, and so like I said, I get pretty passionate about that because, yeah, I could have looked back and I could have made some better investments or something, but at the same time, just like I said about my team roping, every time I took my eye off the ball, my job
your bareback riding
suffered.
went down.
Yeah, and I felt like I did good by getting the extra point. If I went to 60, 70 rodeos a year, I would knock an extra point or two out of every horse I got on, and that snowballs. When you lose your focus and you're not doing that anymore, then you're not the best guy. And so if you're focused on starting a landscaping company or some crap like that so you can hold your money together, now you're not the best bareback rider. And so to those guys' defense, they need to be able to focus on being the best rodeo athletes that they can. And so I just want rodeo to get to the point where they can win more and keep it.
Yeah, I put it in super layman's terms. You use the NFR as an example. If the NFR was a giant bar and we were hiring a band to go in there for all these people to come and fill the Tolleson-Mack, we had to pay the band. We have to pay the band what they're worth, and we got to give them a percentage of what we sell the tickets for. And when that band leaves there, they get Lamborghinis and leave there. You guys were the talent. I mean, you are the talent, right? So I have no idea what it'll take or how it works, but for the PRCA and that whole group to make so much money out of Vegas, and then like you said, to see a guy got to sell his saddle or sell a trailer he won here or there. I mean, yeah, and sometimes it is the guy. I'll play the devil's advocate a little bit, but not always. I'm with you. Like I think that is the most unjust thing that goes on in this industry is these guys, they're just and they're used because of their love for the sport, right? I mean, there was probably a time in your life where you just go get on bareback horses for free because you loved it so much, and there's guys out here that, I mean, you grow up, this little kid growing up, I just want to make the NFR, I just want to make the NFR. You let all of the rest of it go by. But I think the organization that makes the money off of the people in the arena should help the people in the arena. My personal opinion.
No, I agree 100%.
From a guy.
Not only that, but if the pros are going where the pros should be going, then that opens the door for the rising stars or the 100%. Challengers to come and go and earn money somewhere else.
100%.
Right? And so, but if you make the pros go to every county fair rodeo that there is, now the circuit guys don't have a way to get in, and the pros just spent all their money that they won at the last one trying to get to the next one. And so it doesn't make any sense. They wear everything out. They're away from home. I mean, it just, but at the same time, it's hard to help guys if you say, here's a better opportunity, then they say, okay, well, I'll take it, but I do need to sneak off to this amateur over here or whatever. And so, I mean,
it's a tough deal no matter what.
Yeah. I think it's getting better, and I want to see it get a lot better.
Yeah, us too. So, man, we sure appreciate you coming up here, taking the time. We appreciate watching you rope. We'll definitely be here to watch your horse in the sale. And
thank you.
Come see us again.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate you.
Thank you.